Good evening, viewers. Here's tonight's edition of the regional news. Starting off with news from Jamaica. Prime Minister Andrew HOLNESS has called on Jamaica to remain calm even as Jamaica continues to record an increase in cases of COVID-19. Speaking during a press conference on Sunday, the Prime Minister also declared that there will be no more lockdowns due to the pandemic. HOLNESS said, and I quote, "I have been very clear in Parliament, very clear absolutely, gone overboard to say we are not going back to lockdowns, so be calm." End of quote. He added that people should get vaccinated as the health authorities continue to grapple with a fourth wave of the pandemic. And I quote, "It is now in your hands. Go and take the vaccine. That is a strategy. We can't hold you down and put the needle in your hand. If you get sick, you take that responsibility." End of quote. Jamaica on Friday reported 1,593 new COVID-19 cases as a new high record for the island since the start of the pandemic. Friday's numbers marked the third consecutive day the country recorded more than 1,000 positive cases. There are 7,229 confirmed active COVID-19 cases on the island. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is now the first member state of the sub-regional grouping, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, to be granted permission for the export of medicinal cannabis. On Friday, the government announced that the island would export its first shipment of medicinal cannabis to Europe. The announcement follows the recent approval of the first export certificate for medicinal cannabis. The export permission was granted to a Caribbean cannabis company trading as Medicinal. The company already has several products marketed locally and has worked with traditional cultivators in building out their supply chain. The granting of permission to export came after an import certificate was issued by the Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices for the product to legally enter Germany. According to Agriculture Minister Saboto Caesar, the jurisdiction has worked over the last 3 years with international agencies, friendly governments, and local public and private sector stakeholders to make this a reality. And news from the Bahamas. The Bahamas and Cuba have signed an agreement for the recruitment of nurses from the communist island to fill vacancies in the Bahamian health system. Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Michael Darville and Minister of Public Health Dr. Jose Miranda signed a cooperation agreement for emergency response to COVID-19 in Havana, Cuba on Saturday. Cuba said a brigade from the Henry Reeve International Contingent of Specialized Doctors in Disaster Situations and Serious Epidemics, composed mainly of nursing personnel, will work in the Bahamas. Since the start of the pandemic, Cuba has sent medics from the Henry Reeve International Contingent to over 30 countries and territories across the Caribbean, Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Last week, the Bahamian government said it was recruiting 50 nurses from Cuba to work at the Princess Margaret Hospital in Nassau to help with the treatment of COVID-19 patients. Over 60 Bahamian medical staff are currently infected with COVID-19 or under quarantine. And finally, Suriname, still peeved at the treatment meted out to its nationals by the Trinidad-based Caribbean Airlines, is reported to have denied the airline's request to resume flights to the Dutch-speaking Caribbean community, CARICOM country. Late last year, Caribbean Airlines began announcing the resumption of flights to several of its destinations, has so far not yet responded to the allegation by Suriname. Suriname said that the airline, unlike others, did not look after its passengers who were stranded here when the airspace was closed to regular commercial flights in March 2020 as part of the measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Media reports said since Suriname reopened its airspace and regular flights have resumed, several international airlines have resumed their operations, but Caribbean Airlines has not yet received permission to resume flying the route, and the airlines is indicating that it will resume flights between the Sandridge and PRK International Airports on January 18. Several international airlines have resumed their operations, but Caribbean Airlines has not yet received permission to resume flying the route, and the airline is indicating that it will resume flights between the Sandridge and PRK International Airports on January 18. And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Regional News. I'm Joel Vogt. Thank you for joining.